Welcome to the Public Interest. This is a program that allows for open and frank discussions on matters of national importance. As always, we have with us His Excellency President David Granger. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
And also joining us are two journalists from our local media fraternity, Mr. Mark Murray from the Newsroom, a privately run, fairly new media outlet, and from the National Communications Network, Ms. Shunza Samuels. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
We're going to start off today's discussion focusing a little on regional security. Mr. President, yesterday you toured the HMS Mersey, the British naval vessel that docked in Guyana a few days ago. What, in your view, is the significance of the arrival of this ship in Caribbean territory in terms of international cooperation on regional security?
Well, that's a very good question. In fact, the British, or the Royal Navy as it's properly called, never disengaged from the colonial era. And it is my understanding that because of the surge in narco-trafficking and also the prevalence of disasters, there's an annual hurricane season, the Royal Navy had remained engaged, particularly in the Anglophone Caribbean countries. And they cooperate with the other countries, the United States and the Netherlands, which, as you know, still has relations with some states, and also with France. So the Royal Navy, the significance of the visit of the ship is that, one, it is just an extension of the work it's been doing all along. Two, it helps to reinforce Guyana's role as a Caribbean country which participates in the disaster emergency and management program with other Caribbean states, particularly those that are susceptible to hurricanes. And also it helps to deal with the narco-trafficking threat because they have done several interceptions. The type of ship we saw yesterday is designed for disaster preparedness and narcotics intervention. So from any angle, Guyana could benefit from cooperating with the Royal Navy. So that's the benefit, and we hope that it intensifies the relationship between the Royal Navy and the Guyana Coast Guard.
Thank you, sir. Mark, Shunza, your questions on this topic?
I'll go first, Mr. President. Coming back to that same recent visit, your team reported that you're keen on exploring some kind of cooperation with the UK in fighting the narco trade. How keen are you, sir?
Well, it is still a problem for us. As you know, over the last 20 years, the narcotics threat has brought a lot of trouble to Guyana. During the first 12 years of this century, I could say, we had a spate of disorder, murder, executions, largely the result of narcotics and drug lords. Up to now, we're still seeing some execution murders. So we are aware that narcotics still being exported out of Guyana. It means that drugs have to be coming in because we are not cocaine producers. We cannot do this on our own. We cannot protect our borders on our own. We cannot prevent traffickers from bringing narcotics, particularly cocaine, into our country on our own. We depend on countries with technology, particularly United States and also United Kingdom. So even when the drugs come in, they have to get out because the lucrative markets are in Europe or North America. And it is in that regard that we feel the Royal Navy would be able to help us to stop this narco-trafficking. So I know that there's still drug trafficking taking place from Guyana. As you may know, recently we had an agreement to set up something called NANA, the National Anti-Narcotics Agency, which will be under retired Major General Michael Attlee. So we are upgrading our counter-narcotics effort, and at the same time we are improving our relations with the countries which can help us to bring narcotics trafficking to an end. And in this case, the Royal Navy can do that.
Okay.
All right, Mr. President. With that said, would we see in the near future you entering into a formal agreement with the UK in terms of protection of, or in terms of security enforcement along our borders?
Not so fast. My main concern is having an agreement with other CARICOM states, and we already have as you know, a framework, because the CARICOM community, the Caribbean community, recently adopted security as its fifth pillar, and the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is the responsible state within CARICOM for security. At the last intersessional meeting in Belize, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, raised the matter again. It's a continuing responsibility by Trinidad and Tobago. My main concern is having a multilateral agreement with other CARICOM states. And on the basis of that agreement, we can then enter into negotiations with the United Kingdom. So it is simply a technical arrangement that can follow, because we don't want to enter into bilateral relationship, which might jeopardize our relationship with the CARICOM states. Because we're all singing from the same song sheet, and I'm sure that once we have agreement among the CARICOM states, and there is some basis for agreement now, we'll be able to proceed with a more firm agreement with the United Kingdom and the Royal Navy.
I know last year at an event in Washington, you made calls for a stronger collective security system.
That's correct.
In light of that, do you see, in terms of, do you see us moving forward as a region in that area in terms of strengthening our security mechanism as it relates to protection of our borders and regional threats?
Yes, I see that happening. As you know, for several decades, there's been something called the RSS, the Regional Security System. Mm-hmm. It is based in Barbados, and it works. In addition to that, we have seen successful operations at the time of Cricket World Cup, in which some institutions were created. Unfortunately, they had a life, what they call sunset agreements, and they expired. But the bases are still intact, and this is the responsibility of Trinidad and Tobago. So we're walking on two legs. One, they are the remnants of, well, I don't say remnants in a bad light, but there are some institutions which were preserved from Cricket World Cup, and there's the RSS. I feel that under the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, we will be able to bring the two elements together to have a single regional system. But I don't want to, anticipate what he's going to do. There is need for a regional system. For example, the disaster in Grenada, Hurricane Ivan, or the disaster last year in Dominica. All of these disasters require collective response. So you need to have a collective system in order to respond in an organized way to these threats. The threats won't go away. Every year, in fact, in a few weeks' time, we'll be in hurricane season again, and unfortunately, somebody's going to get hit, and whoever gets hit will need assistance. Guyana is safe, of course, from that, but it means that we have an obligation to help our sisters in the Caribbean.
And on that note, sir, could you say what's Guyana's capacity in terms of lending support to this issue? Capacity in the context of financial support, skills, ability, sharing of information, and stuff like that?
Well, I don't anticipate being asked for financial support, but we have given material assistance before. We have personnel in the Guyana Defense Force. We have a Civil Defense Commission which works with the CDEMA, which is the Caribbean Disaster and Emergency Management Agency. I think that's based in Barbados. So we will lend expertise, we will provide materials. We've gotten a lot of materials from the United States, Southern Command, and we have a depot, which of course is used in first instance for disaster relief in Guyana. But if we are asked for help by CDEMA or by a state, we will assist. In fact, we have already assisted in Dominica after their disaster last year. So this is what we intend to do, and we have the capability to help within the Caribbean framework. These are not all bilateral, they are sometimes multilateral, and once we ask, we'll help, because when we need help, we'll get help.
If there are no more questions on this topic, we can move into the next segment of the program where we can ask questions on any topical issue. I'll start us off, Mr. President. The local government elections have come and gone, and you have spoken at length of the economic potential of the 10 administrative regions. What is the role of the tongues, the existing ones and the ones that will soon be established in this regard?
It's a very strong question, Vindy. The tongues are, in my mind, important engines for the propulsion of the economies of these regions. I would like to say there are two types of tongues. They are what we call secondary tongues. I regard Rose Hall and Corriverton as secondary tongues. I like to think of tongues as capital tongues. New Amsterdam, Linden, Bartica, Mabaruma will be capital tongues. They are capitals of the regions. Georgetown is not a capital of region. Georgetown is the national capital. But I would like to see every region being headed by a tongue, which is the capital tongue. There may be other tongues later on, but I want to see that capital tongue as being the heart of government business, with police, courts, and so on, but also with a central business district, with banks, chamber of commerce, restaurants, factories, and aerodromes. I like to see businessmen coming and going from other Caribbean countries. So for me, it is very important. That is the main value of the local government elections, that in 2016 we brought into being, for the first time in 40 years, a new set of tongues, 3 new tongues, and there will be more tongues. Madi will become a tongue to administer that huge Region 8, the Potaro-Siparuni region. As you know, Rupununi is our largest region. It's bigger than Costa Rica. Letem will be the capital tongue. So Mabaruma is a capital tongue, Bartica is a capital tongue, Letem is a capital tongue. And they're meant to be the economic centers of these regions. That is my mission, and that's my objective.
Thank you, sir. Your questions?
All right, Mr. President, there are some concerns in the public domain as it relates to the appointment of Brian Tewari. Now, can we have you stating for us the process of his appointment, first of all, why it was rescinded, and in what capacity is he accompanying Minister of State Joseph Harmon overseas, and where is he right now?
Well, you've asked a lot of questions.
Yes.
Number one, Mr. Tewari is not an appointee of the government. He is not performing any function, and that is why the position was rescinded. He's not required to provide any business function. We have a Minister of Business, and as far as I'm concerned, that minister is quite capable, quite competent. And he has not asked me for any assistance. And I personally rescinded Mr. Tewari's appointment. Where he is at present, I don't know. As far as I know, Minister of State went with one person, I think Ms. Sipasad from NISL, to deal with government business concerning the Guyana Telecoms, GT&T interests. And that's as much as I know, and that's all I can say at this point in time. But we don't have any ongoing relation with Mr. Tewari, and that's all I can say. I certainly don't have any need for him in that role, and that's why his position was rescinded.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, coming to this issue, the police, they're now hunting a woman who took to social media and declared that someone should put a bullet to your head. What is your reaction to this woman's opinion, and if she's captured, would you like to meet her?
Once she's unarmed, I don't mind meeting her. If she's still got a gun in her hand, well, I'd be a little more cautious. This is very novel. This is novel in Guyana to actually threaten a head of state. This is not Guyanese style of politics. I do believe that it is a police matter. It's nothing that should be ignored. And the police have to pay more attention to what takes place in cyberspace. Nowadays, many persons who may not know me or may not know a head of state could be influenced by hostile propaganda based on false information, and they could be induced to do harmful things to other citizens. That would be very bad, not only for me and my head, of course, but it will be very bad for the country. You know, that people feel that the way to settle political differences is by violence. I've never advocated violence, and I don't support the use of violence to deal with any political controversies or conflicts. So I'm astonished that Guyanese, if the person is Guyanese, could resort to that level of communication on the social media. And I certainly would treat it as a security matter and ask the police to find the person and deal with that person in accordance with the law.
On that note, Mr. President, are you concerned with the level of racism that still exists in the country, especially at a time when Guyanese ought to unite and rise above our differences?
Well, I'm deeply concerned because I regarded our 50th anniversary celebrations as an opportunity for Guyanese to come together. I was, of course, an adult at the time of independence, and I was very horrified, and many people of my generation were horrified at the condition of the country at that time, because we were divided. We had just come out of a period of what people call the disturbances, in which they were racial murders and arson and other crimes. So I personally regarded 26th of May 2016 as a period of national unity, as an opportunity for healing. Unfortunately, I noticed in the paper one political leader stating that his business in local government elections was to cater for one specific ethnic group. Again, I think that was not beneficial to the country. I think it was harmful to the whole notion of national unity. And I think it's a backward step. People are coming together. I was in a national park on Monday, and there are people of different ethnicities who came out. Nobody regards that as a Christian holiday. It's a national holiday. I participated in the Chowtal ceremonies last Tuesday at State House. I participated in the Pagwa ceremony on Wednesday. And, this is not a question of race anymore. I think the appeals to racism or the appeals to race are backward and harmful to Guyana. We all have differences, but people should not be judged on the basis of race. And I will continue to work for national unity. This has been my promise, my pledge from the time I entered presidential politics, and I will continue to work for national unity. I think this is what most people want in Guyana, to do away with racism and to provide a basis for equality. And when you see me going into the countryside, going into the hinterland, I want to make sure that the people living there enjoy equal access to education and to the benefits of the state. And when I speak about regionalism, I don't want the people in Lethem or Bartica or Mabaruma or Madi to feel that they're second class simply because they're geographically or removed or they're ethnically different from people in other parts of the country. All of this is part of my vision to have a united nation.
Sir, could you tell us a bit about the decision behind Ambassador George Talbot's reposting? It's not sitting well with some persons. How do you respond to your critics?
George Talbot?
Yeah. Ambassador Talbot's reposting. He's now being posted to Brazil. He was once the UN ambassador for Guyana.
Is there a problem? I'm not aware that there's a problem. He is qualified in languages, and he has served a very long time at the United Nations as our permanent rep. And as you know, we've made some new appointments. I wasn't aware that it was a controversial appointment. He had to agree to serve there. And we feel he's a fit and proper person. He's a career diplomat. And we feel he's the fittest person to go in Brasilia at this point in time. It is always better to have somebody who can master the language of the host country, and particularly in light of our thrust in the South American continent in terms of UNASUR, Mercosur, CELAC, and other multilateral organizations. Having served with the United Nations, he is a keen negotiator. I worked with him in New York, in Addis Ababa, and I feel he's a very good man. So I'm not aware of any controversy, but I'm happy to have him in Brasilia.
In light of the findings and recommendations of the forensic audits published on the Ministry of Finance's website, what's government's position on the way forward, since these audits have implicated some top officials under the former government?
Well, this administration, does not want to be accused of witch hunting or purging any ministries, and that is why we've embarked on this course. Before we make accusations, we should find out the facts, the truth. When this happens, the reports are submitted to the cabinet, and the cabinet will decide. It's not a one-person show. We don't shoot from the hip. We want to give persons in cabinet an opportunity to study the reports. So I don't want to anticipate what cabinet will decide. In some instances, there may be allegations of neglect. Some may involve, criminal behavior, fraud, and we must find out, the blameworthiness of the persons who have been reported in these forensic and other audits. When we look at blameworthiness, you'll see whether it is something we can live with, and there's a range of sanctions. Somebody might be warned, somebody might be censured, somebody might be dismissed, somebody may be put before the courts. So there's a range of sanctions, and we have to wait on Cabinet's decision before we decide how those sanctions will be applied.
Okay, but as the head of state, what is your thoughts, and I'm sure you've previewed some of the recommendations and the reports and so on, but what are your thoughts on some of the startling findings and so on?
Well, although I'm head of state, I'm guided by my advisors in the cabinet. We have 15 ministries, as you know, and I don't want to anticipate what they would decide. These decisions are taken collectively. Although I'm head of state, I'm advised by my colleagues. So I would want to hear what they say. Sometimes, persons who have examined the reports may find that it could be a matter of neglect, it could be a matter of institutional weakness, and we will take corrective action to strengthen the institution or to remove persons who are accused of committing grievous, financial and other crimes. So we're not going to tolerate criminality, but at the same time, we want to ensure that the systems are in place to ensure that there is transparency and compliance with the law.
Mr. President, there's a call for your social protection minister to demit office based on an alleged child molestation case. Her reaction towards it, how would you respond to that call?
Well, I have already responded. I invited Ms. Lawrence. She is the vice chairman of our party, the People's National Congress. And we have procedures. As you know, the PNC is a 59-year-old party, and their internal procedures. I do not support the nomination of any person who has been convicted of any offense. So when I heard of the nomination, I asked Mrs. Lawrence to explain how this person came to be nominated. Now, I just think the public should understand that the PNCR and the APNU have been campaigning for local government elections for 3 years. It's nothing new. I was actually 2 years ago, as you know, I was picketing this very office, the Ministry of the Presidency, as we then called the Office of the President, calling for local government elections. We went to Parliament demanding local government elections be held by the 1st of August 2014. The point I'm making is that the PNC had been working and has procedures. We have a Congress, we have a Constitution, we have General Council, we have Central Executive Committee, and the procedure is that the constituents themselves should make these nominations. They're not made by one or two persons, they're made by the constituents. And Mrs. Lawrence has explained that the nomination, the recommendation came from the persons with whom this nominee was working. And this is basically what she said to the media, that this person had been working with the party and he had not been convicted of any offense. So the matter will be referred to the Central Executive Committee of our party in accordance with our constitution, and the decision will be made there. But on the face of it, I said, I have referred Mrs. Lawrence's comments. I've asked her for a report. She has provided a report, and that report will be sent to the Central Executive Committee of the party. So at this point in time, there's no question of her arbitrary dismissal from office, from the ministerial position, but the matter has been referred to the CEC of the PNC.
So, sorry, if she is found to be culpable of what persons have been accusing her of, what's the next step as it relates?
Well, what I try to explain is, she did not interfere with the nomination process. It's not a personal nominee. It came from the constituents themselves who felt that the person who was nominated has been working. And the point that she made in the release to the press is that the person not being convicted. I'm not supporting or opposing. The point I'm making is that a report has been submitted to me, an explanatory report has been submitted to me, and this will be sent to the CEC of the PNC.
Okay.
I think we have time for one more question.
I wanted to ask, what is the current state of the Wales estate? Since persons have been on social media, and there was a recent protest in New York calling for government to renege on its decision, well, not to revisit the decision to close the factory.
I am at present, I had expected it by today, the last day of March, to get a report from the Minister of Agriculture. I have not received it as yet, but this might be because we did not have cabinet meeting on Tuesday, and the next cabinet will be held on next Tuesday, and we expect to report it. But my understanding is that arrangements have been made for the processing of the canes and for employment of some of those persons who desire employment, who coming out of Wales estate. But the bottom line was that it was uneconomical to maintain the level of losses that we were sustaining there. And I hope that when we meet again, I can give you a full report. But Mr. Holder, the Minister of Agriculture, is going to make a report to Cabinet on Tuesday, the first Tuesday in April.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That's all the time we have for this week. Mark and Shunza, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Please remember to join us again next week for another program. Until then, be safe and have a productive rest of the week. Goodbye.